On our boy JB to show up before I put this horse to sleep and continued to kick it. LSU defensive lineman. There should be some news today, and we saw it yesterday. Grand Valley State defensive tackle JBR Suggs, who visited the Tigers on Sunday, shared some pictures from his trip on social media. He thanked all of the LSU coaches. He also made it very clear that he's not committed. The 6'3", 280-pound sophomore who was originally from Flint, Michigan, recently visited LSU. He's visited Wisconsin and Kentucky, and the fourth school in his top four is Michigan. He's headed back home today. Over the past two seasons, Sugg has registered over 40 tackles, 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 9 passes defended. So not bad numbers over the last 2 years, but right now, you are scraping the bottom of the barrel where you were desperate for defensive tackles, and now you're kind of waiting on pins and needles to see what a Division II 280-pound interior defensive lineman, where he goes. I think he made it clear that LSU has laid out the best NIL offer, and LSU's still not gotten a commitment. Look, even if you do get Suggs, I'm not saying that you're a national championship contender. If you miss on Suggs, how?
Where do you turn?
I mean, what do you do, really and truly? And I don't mean to middle of May, blow the season up, and by no means is it. But, I mean, if we're talking about having the best NIL package on the table, missing on a guy that, in a regular cycle, in a regular rotation, wouldn't even think about playing at a school like LSU, and here you are offering this guy starting type reps, and he's leaving Baton Rouge without a commitment. I think that would be a terrible look. A horrible look.
Yeah, it's more of the optics
Kelly.
of it.
It is. It's a bad optical illusion on this. And again, I'm not here to blow it up and tell you that they can't win a game now if they don't get defensive tackle, but you got to get realistic about it now. Forget the caliber of the player, right? And I have in the camp of, you don't just hand out scholarships to hand them out and fill up spots. That'll put you in a bad position where you're kind of doing what you're doing now, right? Where you're trying to recoup some of that and get quality in, but because you had to take so many guys on the front end, have been gobbling up scholarship spots, and you've not been able to fill those up with quality type players. And here you are desperate for players, and you can't get quality or quantity at this point, it seems like. I got a bad feeling on Suggs.
Well, this is the cause for concern, or the reason you would pause, is because this is from On 3 update from Shea, who's on his way to go see Pearl Jam in, I believe, Vegas right now. So I don't know if we'll hear from. I don't think we'll hear from him. No show Friday, but I wouldn't have counted on Shea if he's in Vegas. It would have been an electric phone call if he was awake at 8 on a Friday in Vegas. That would only be because.
Would it be 6 a.m. in Vegas?
Yeah, that would have been that would have been a hell of a Thursday then.
That spells a disaster.
But this is from Shea. With the visits now complete, 2 trusted sources feel LSU may have taken the lead in the 11th hour. That said, the same sources agreed with others who were hesitant to circle the Tigers as the no-doubt pick, given the distance. Suggs is a Michigan native with a Michigan offer, and LSU staff certainly understands the weight that can hold with recruits. This was his first visit to Baton Rouge, and would it be enough for Suggs to feel comfortable moving 1,000-plus miles from home? In the opinion of one source close to the recruitment, distance is the biggest question Suggs will have to answer. So, and also, if you want to talk about NIL, adding the NIL opportunities touched on were more than others in the race. As he nears the decision, the finalists are Michigan, Kentucky, Wisconsin, LSU. And Suggs flew home yesterday. One source felt the decision could come today, on Wednesday.
Let's go.
So it'll be announced on Twitter. He wanted to go home to make the decision, so I don't know if that's go home and pack your bags or go home, I'm from Flint, don't drink the water, I'm going straight to Michigan's campus. It feels like those are the two.
We'll see.
I mean, they can't figure it out.
I'm with you. Go Tigers tonight, 195. Only Jordy would take the guy who, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's committed to LSU and turn it into, well, what if we miss? You just did the same thing. I mean, unless you can guarantee me that he's going to commit, there's a chance that he may not. I mean, you hope you get him. There's hope you get him. And if you don't, what's the situation you're in? I don't think it's that vastly different if you get him or you don't.
You just need a win.
You know what I mean? Like, really and truly, if you land JVR Suggs today, it's not like you've cemented your spot into the final 12. I'm not saying that at all. I would have said the same thing about Dominic Williams had you landed him last week. At this point, you need rotational guys because I believe with Spectrum Wellcare and what he says, Jordy, you guys are forgetting that Bo Davis is going to develop the defensive tackles that LSU has. I've not forgotten that. I am accounting for that. I know that that's going to happen. I know the defensive line play is going to improve at LSU just by having Bo Davis on campus. I think that the players are going to get better. I think the technique is going to get better. I think just the commitment to the position is you're going to see the dividends that it's paying by bringing him in. I don't discredit that at all. And I know he's going to develop the guys that are on campus. In the same breath, we've got to be realistic in the sense of talking about the players that you're taking into the fight, and both the quality and quantity of what you're going into the SEC season with is not typically how LSU approaches a football season. This is not the formula on being successful up front in the trenches in line play in the Southeastern Conference. It has been proven time and time and time and time again, proven by LSU at certain points. You got to have high-end players, and you got to have a rotation of them. And right now, LSU's missing on both. I do believe that Bo Davis is going to make every single player that's in that room right now a better football player. He's probably already done that by the 15 practices that they had on spring and the attention that they were paying to him on the field, to just having him in the film room every single day and just talking to him about what it looks like to play good football. Those guys are going to be better. Those guys are going to be quality. Those guys, I am not betting on being able to last start to finish fully healthy and playing at a high level. They haven't proven it. If they do it, it'll be awesome. I hope they can. I believe they need more numbers, and the ship has sailed on going out and getting the Dominic Williams, Simeon Barrow player that existed.
I don't know if that ship has sailed.
Okay, well then where are they?
Tyler Barron.
Get him.
He is
Louisville.
Then he committed to Ole Miss in the portal window, signed with Ole Miss, but Ole Miss has to release him from his.
He didn't sign. He technically didn't sign with Ole Miss. He signed a deal with Ole Miss that other SEC teams could not tamper with his recruitment to Ole Miss. So teams like Miami, anybody out of the SEC could continue to recruit him, but schools within the SEC could not if they wanted to. Ole Miss has to release him from that binding SEC agreement to be able to visit or contact other SEC schools.
Yeah.
But he's a player.
Because he is – LSU is recruiting his stepbrother.
Yes.
Wesley Walker, a safety from Louisville. I guess they're just trying to add to the depth in the safety room, add a veteran player. But, I mean, Barron, 101 career tackles, 27 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups, 6'4", 260 pounds.
Get him. I mean, I hear all of that. I hear the names, the numbers, like, get them all, man, because I'm looking at the room. Let's look at the defensive tackle room in the way that it sits right now. You've got a pair of veteran players that are in the room that you've got high trust in. Jacobian Guillory is a guy who's played the most football at LSU. He's the one who comes back as a fifth-year returning senior to Baton Rouge. He's the guy that you look at is the leader in the room. I mean, when you're just talking about the guy who you would trust the most, has played the most football, is Jacobian Guillory. After that, Jalen Lee is a guy who's in the room. Lee is originally from Live Oak High School, committed and went to Florida his first 2 years and is now transferred back in. He hasn't played a ton of football in the SEC. He didn't play a lot at Florida. He played some. and he didn't play at all when he got here last year. He's a guy that's going to have to play. And from, what we were talking about a little bit ago, I believe that Bo Davis can make both of these guys SEC defensive linemen. Like they will be able to play in the league. Again, Lee has not done it a significant amount of time. Guillory has. And those guys are going to have to nearly go wire to wire of staying healthy and being productive. That's just the reality of it. After that, you got guys like Demarion Johnson, Shone Washington, Preston Hickey, Ahmad Bro is going to be in there, Dominic McKinley. All of those guys who I just mentioned, yes, they can play. Gio Paez is another addition from Wisconsin that I think is going to be, kind of a plug-and-play guy because he's done it. You put him into that veteran group with Guillory and Lee of, some guys that have skins on the wall. They've played football at a high level. They understand what it's like. I mean, they're going to have to play a lot of snaps. After that, I mean, you're talking about this group, Demarion Johnson. Demarion Johnson's a true freshman that's at LSU. He is going to be thrust into playing a key role. I mean, he's coming off of he's probably in a red shirt, right?
Who?
I mean, I would think he's redshirt.
I mean, like, hey, I'm not gonna,
unless they absolutely need the body,
which they will, But I mean, like, he's not physically ready to go. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
Demarion Johnson.
Oh, I mean, that's somebody I keep reading about him, but that's a name you haven't heard yet because
Exactly,
they've been trying to go.
It would be
portal.
Awesome.
Yeah,
if you can get some production out of him. Are you counting on it? I'm not.
They weren't.
Shone Washington, a JUCO transfer. He's come here. He was committed and signed to Georgia coming out of high school. He had to go the JUCO route. Once again on the recruiting scene, he was a high-end target for people out there. Coming out of spring, I didn't hear all these glowing Shone Washington remarks of he's the guy that's going to be the starter. So, I mean, it sounds like he's a project. I believe that Bo Davis is going to make him a better football player, and at some point, Shone Washington is going to be productive. It didn't sound like coming out of spring that they saw all of that to be glowing about it right now going into the year.
No, the biggest story out of spring was the walk-on defensive tackle.
Preston Hickey.
That's my guy.
The walk-on.
St. Paul's, baby.
Second team snaps during spring camp. Pretty impressive rotational player for LSU when they needed him. Now LSU's got to become, and Hickey, with Hickey, he's got to become an every down player. Yeah, it's something that he's not done. This is not something that Shone Washington has shown he can do. Demarion Johnson has not proved he could do that. And then you get to the true freshmen, to both of them. Ahmad Bro, early enrollee. He's had to switch positions. He played defensive end. He's now moved into the interior defensive line. Look, he's 6'5". He's 260 pounds. I mean, for a true freshman, that's a great build. For a true freshman that has to play defensive tackle in the SEC, not ideal. Can he do it? Sure, he can. Is that the best plan going into the year of a November that features Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M? And Oklahoma? I mean, that late in the season? This is why you got to have the rotation, the quantity of it. And then Don McKinley, the 5-star freshman who's coming in, who was the top defensive lineman for much of his high school career in that class out of Acadiana, a late signee for Frank Wilson and the staff, a guy who was a big win and a big coup to get in. He's going to have to play. He's going to have to play against USC. I mean, that's the timeline that they're on. So that's the defensive line room, right? I mean, am I missing anybody? Did I miss anybody there? I mean, I'm saying it out loud. The veteran group, Jacoby and Guillory, played a lot of football, but has been a rotational guy, has not really been an every down starter. He started a little bit, but he's not been that guy. Here in his 5th year, he's going to have to be. Jalen Lee has not played nearly any football in the SEC. Played at Florida. He played sparingly at LSU, a couple of downs, but for the most part has not played that high end of football. Gio Paez has played football at Wisconsin. He's never played it in the SEC. Those are your 3 veterans at the position. After that, you've got Demarion Johnson, who's a true freshman, Shone Washington, who's a junior college transfer, Preston Hickey, who's a walk-on, and Ahmad Bro and Dominic McKinley are 2 signees. That's the mix. You don't not have defensive tackles. You got guys. But out of that room, what do you know? That's a very... you think it's uncomfortable for us. You know, you out there who's listening as a fan, us who's waiting to see what... Can you imagine being the coaching staff? Like, fellas, we're going to pull up into the swamp and... We're going to count on true freshmen and defensive tackles on the road in the SEC.
Christian Lacator ain't walking through that
75,000 people want to kill us. They want our blood. And, you know, we're going to have to look at a guy like Preston Hickey and Ahmad Bro and say, fellas, last year you were playing at Olympia, at Memorial Stadium. This is the swamp on a Saturday night. And you've got to play every down. I'm sure they can do it. It's football. It's not like you're, going to the moon. But it's what we talk about. The difference in great and good football teams, to me, always comes down to the line of scrimmage. It'll always come down to the line of scrimmage. And if you've got a 22-year-old, a 21-year-old blocking an 18, 19, green behind the ears defensive tackle, a junior college defensive tackle who's not played at that level, who's not proven that he can stand through it, hey, let's see. It's sure as hell not taking Glenn Dorsey, Drake Nevis, and Claude Roten into a game where you're like, hey, ain't nobody shoving us around. We will control the line of scrimmage all night. For 4 quarters, there's one thing I can assure you of. We will not be pushed around up front. Maybe these guys won't be pushed around. I don't know it. Neither do their coaches.
Well, I think that's where the answer lies. If we're not there, we're not in the building. But if from the outside looking in, if you see the amount of work they're doing for the defensive line and that defensive tackle in particular, I think that gives you the answer right there of what they think that they need as far as the defensive staff and as defensive coaches, because you wouldn't be portal hunting like this if you felt good about the room that you have. Like, would you be going out for Suggs and being this publicly stating it, we're looking for defensive tackles in the portal if you felt good about your room?
No.
There's your answer. So
Brian Kelly was...
They don't want to have to go into these games and rely on freshmen or...
Nobody does, man.
That's right. It's not rocket science. Yeah. You've seen it before. Like, while we're all those Alabama teams great, offensive, defensive line, you have the offensive line in spades, but it does, if you don't, as good as the offensive line is, that's how weird you feel about the defensive line. Like, you're getting offensive line.
I would say for as good and as confident as I feel about the offensive line,
it's the opposite.
Yeah. Jaden Bro, the sky isn't falling, Jory. Try to make us believe Bowen Baker got this. Buddy, the sky's not falling. Those are the facts. You know what I mean?
This isn't conjecture.
I'm not telling you that they're going to get beat by USC. They might beat USC, and I believe in Bo Davis and Blake Baker to get it right. Immediately in 2024, when you look at their defensive line, outside looking in, we would all vote they're in more trouble than they are safety. It's not blow the season up. That's the facts. You know what I mean? Like, for as much as we feel great about them on the offensive line, it's everything the opposite on the other side of the ball. On the offensive line, you've got high-end frontline starters that are veterans that have played at a high level now for multiple years. Behind them, you've got a crop of depth that, hey, you can lose a guy like Zalance Hurd and not really feel it. Imagine if Jacoby and Guillory left in the offseason and would have decided not to come back for a 5th year. I mean, you're on a desperate island at defensive tackle where you got to be like, hey man, you can't leave. I mean, like you can't leave. You have to come back, right? So I mean, it's not burn the world. It's just the state of the program. You know, I mean, it's the state of where they are. They got a great offensive line. They have no depth on the defensive line, and they have no proven commodities. That's all it is. That's all it is. Same thing at cornerback. Right, like
they're out there trying to get a corner.
They got some guys that they believe in at corner, and they believe that PJ Woodland's going to be a really good player. But again, you want to take a true freshman on the road in the SEC and say, "Hey man, grow up on the road in this venue, grow up." Versus USC, where you can't sit back and watch a veteran out there for a couple of series where you're like, "Okay, now this is the speed, this is how it works." Like, no, buddy, get out there. You got to go play. And you can't get hurt. It's not ideal is what I'm saying. I'm not burning it. I'm not scorching the earth. But I just gave you the depth chart at defensive line. What am I missing? Where is it off? You know, I mean, you don't need Dominic Williams because he's the highest rated defensive tackle in the portal. You need Dominic Williams because he plays that position alone. That's it. And if you miss on Javion Suggs, you know, it's not the world is ending. It's just like, man, what the hell? The golden ticket in sports is playing time, even in an NIL world. I don't care. But now Javion Suggs is telling me publicly that LSU is making the most aggressive NIL push, and they've got playing time available, and you still don't want to come to LSU? Then what is it? Like, I'm looking at the player like, what is it about? I mean, you're being offered an opportunity to play defensive line in the SEC with Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Arkansas, USC, UCLA on a schedule. You're going to be on TV every single week. You want to go to the league? Prove you can make it through this schedule, playing defensive tackle. Well, what if I don't play? If you can't play at LSU, you can't play in JUCO. You don't worry about the NFL. I'm giving you playing time. I'm telling you, if you show up, you nearly don't even have to compete for a job. I mean, really. You sign this, you're playing SEC football for a national contender. And, oh, by the way, here's a couple of $100,000, man. That's the part that gets me, man. I mean, that's the part that gets me, is that not from the LSU standpoint. It's that LSU's selling playing time to these guys. Like, fellas, what's it about? I mean, really.
But if especially in this case, if it's not playing time that you want and it's NIL that you want, LSU is firmly entrenched in the camp of, we're offering more than the rest of the schools that you're looking at. And it would be just perfectly for how this has gone in terms of recruiting defensive tackles, for it to be, I kind of just want to stay home. You can't compete with that.
Can't do it.
Can't compete with. I don't care how much you pay me. I want to be in Michigan.
What are you gonna do?
Because he's from Flint and he has an offer from Michigan. That's what you're battling against. And he already, like I said, he went home. But if you really drop
the ball.
If you drop the ball, if there's like one thing that you can kind of look at and extrapolate the way that the defensive tackle thing has worked for LSU, go down the line of Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, swing and a miss. Right? Then you look to turn your eyes toward the portal. Dominique Williams, too much. We're not here to pay for play. Not that's too rich for our blood. Right? Then, all right, that doesn't work. So you go to your third option, I would imagine, and now you're late to the party on these because you already thought you didn't have a contingency plan for your contingency plan, and so now you're trying to get in with Javion Suggs, who hasn't heard from you yet. Already had a top 5 list. You you shoved your way through the door. And like, all right, I'll take a visit to LSU, but it's at the 11th hour, and you don't really get the feel of, all right, this is what LSU is. You weren't talking to me. I don't know. I don't have any relationships here. You're basically speed dating, and you're trying to get a yes because you need one so badly. But he's like, I don't know if I want to move my entire life down here because y'all didn't. I wasn't your first choice. You swung and missed 3 times, and now you're like, hey, Suggs,
You look
you
like
in?
you
Yeah,
can play.
you want to come play for LSU? He's like, I don't even know the first thing about LSU. And so that's where you kind of put yourself because you weren't set up to do this. And that's the real, like, the crux of it is you weren't really planning on having to go this deep. And when you get this far in the mud, there's no definite yeses because you haven't recruited any of these people.
No. Wolfgang, it says at Jordy, New Orleans football, it shows that these kids are sticking their hands out for cash and no heart, no hustle, which will not work well in the locker room. I agree. I mean, these are some of the things that we talked about on the front end of NIL is having to manage the personalities around these, around these deals and around the locker room. And like Brian Kelly said earlier last week or late last week about, you're not going to overpay. You're not going to corrupt the locker room for 1 or 2 players. And that makes so much sense. I mean, that's not anything that you're going to debate about. I mean, that's 100% lockstep agree there. It's just it's a time in college sports that I think we're all going to look back on some point at some day and be like, man, that was just crazy. There's no regulations on this stuff. People can just show up, ask for however much money they want. They're probably going to get it somewhere. If you keep asking enough, there's no guidelines, restrictions on it. The power and the autonomy is way outbalanced right now. And why I am pro player, I am for the players' safety, benefit, and choices. There has to be some type of guardrails on this stuff. There has to be a balance of opportunity here. It can't be so shifted in one direction that you've got the program, the coaching staff, the administration held hostage. I mean, I just, and it's not because LSU's losing out. I mean, LSU has benefited on a lot of this stuff from, you think women's basketball, baseball. LSU has seen success, even in football. They've gotten some guys. But now they're in a situation where, defensively, they got to catch it up, man. They just got to. They have to find a groove and really get back to a place where it feels competitive. At this point right now, if you go into the season with these numbers, I'm not talking about the caliber of player. I'm just talking about the numbers, man. It's dangerous. It's dangerous in the sense of you could get to mid-October and late November, into that stretch. And, I mean, you're playing some of the top programs in the country, and you're literally taking a plastic knife into a war, into a gunfight. And that's just the reality of it. That's not scorched earth. That's not the sky is falling. That's not the world is burning. That's just in the SEC. We've all seen enough football up close in this level, in this league, to realize if you're depleted on the defensive front on the line of scrimmage in LSU's schedule and you go into October and November and can't really compete up front, it doesn't matter if you're rolling Will Campbell and Emory Jones and Garrett Nussmeier and Aaron Anderson and Shelton Sampson and Caleb Williams out. I mean, they're going to score, but you're not going to be able to stop.